We mentioned the Pittsburgh Steelers. They needed to win today in order to at least have a shot at that 7th seed. They did their part. 28-14, they beat the Cleveland Browns. Kenny Pickett, 195 and a touchdown. Najee Harris, 84 yards rushing, a rushing touchdown as well. George Pickens continues to have, finishes off a big season for him. The rookie with 72 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown. All right, let's bring in Adam Archuleta, who was on the call for that game of Browns and the Steelers. So the Steelers get the win, Adam, but it appears to be for naught because of the fact that the Dolphins have locked up the 7th seed. But in terms of what you saw on the field today, your thoughts on the Steelers getting that big win over the Browns?
Well, I know they're disappointed, and they really felt like, especially since Week 8, since the bye, that they've been a different team and that they've been a team on a rise. They knew, and even talking to Mike Tomlin, he had a feeling going into this season that if they could just endure the first part, transitioning from Ben Roethlisberger to a new quarterback with a new offensive line and a lot of young skill players, if they could just endure the first half of the season, he felt confident they would get better towards the back half. They did that, and they really started playing their best later and later in the season. But again, just the way it pans out, not enough to get there, and so they're going to have to wait to retool for next season.
Quiet comfort that Mike Tomlin's streak continues. The team finishes 9-8. They have not had a losing season since 2003. So, as mentioned, though, quiet comfort. But when you look at this Steelers team at this point, I mean, are you happy with what you're seeing in terms of how they're progressing going into next season?
Well, I think you look at it in two ways. You look at it, obviously, offensively and defensively. Defensively, they're more established. They have stars. They have playmakers. They have difference makers. They also have a lot of money wrapped up in that defense. On the offensive side, they're young. They have an offensive line that did have the benefit of playing all of their games together this season. They got better as the season went on, and they've got young skill. Najee Harris in his second year. You got Pickens as a rookie. Freiermuth is a young player. And then really it comes down to Kenny Pickett. Now, here's what you love about Pickett and what you've seen from him in his rookie season, and especially here down the stretch. When they needed him to make plays, when they needed him to rise to the occasion and make big throws, he came through and he showed that he is that guy. And that has gone a long way of earning trust in the locker room from a lot of the players and the veterans on that team. They believe that he can be the guy. Now, he's got to get far more polished in the drop-back passing game and throw with anticipation and do all that stuff. He has the entire offseason to work on it, but he does seem to have the traits of at least the highly competitive nature that it takes for a quarterback to be able to play their best in big games.
Quarterback on the other side of this particular contest, DeShaun Watson, who of course had the suspension, came back. There was high expectations for Watson in terms of what he could do with this Cleveland Browns team when he did get in there and take over in this offense. Today, 230 yards, 2 touchdowns, but a disappointing loss for him. What are your thoughts on what you saw from Watson this season?
Well, look, everybody had high expectations because of the last image that we saw of DeShaun Watson back in 2020, and that was one of the elites of the elites. And that was a quarterback that quite often showed magical skills in the passing game. I think it was ambitious to expect that Watson to return. You just can't take that much time away from the game, not just physically but mentally, practicing, being a part of these conversations. That it just doesn't happen. The game is too hard. And so I do expect him with an off season getting ingrained, becoming the guy, being able to start the preseason and all that stuff as a quarterback. I do expect him to play at a high level. He is going to have something on this team he really never had in Houston. That's a good offensive line and a running game. They do have to fix the defense, but I expect him to play much better than he did. Will he be a top 5 guy? I don't know. There's a lot of good quarterbacks up there in the top 5, but I certainly think that we will see him displaying those traits that it takes, or that landed him the big contract here for Cleveland.
Browns finishing the season 7-10. Steelers finished 9-8. Both teams out of the playoffs. Adam Archuleta, thanks for hopping on with us here on HQ to talk about this particular matchup. In terms of the fantasy production, if you're one of those guys that has maybe DFS plays going on Sunday or Perhaps you're playing in your league championship, as it's got bumped back. A number of leagues certainly doing that. But from a fantasy perspective, a big performer of the day in this one, Nick Chubb here on this board, 22 points for him. DeShaun Watson had 21 points, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions for him. We mentioned the 230 yards. His counterpart, Kenny Pickett, with 15 fantasy points. We are looking at the early games in the Week 18.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.